In the cutthroat world of big tech, what is the true measure of a person's value? Is it their job title, the volume of their voice in a meeting, or the ruthlessness with which they climb the corporate ladder? We're often told that to succeed, you have to be loud, aggressive, and impossible to ignore. But this is a story about a woman who was the exact opposite. She was ignored, dismissed, and treated as if she were invisible. But while they looked right through her, she saw everything. Get ready, because you are about to discover how the quietest person in the room can make the most powerful noise. The headquarters of Auratech in San Francisco was a cathedral of modern ambition. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling glass walls, glinting off polished concrete floors and illuminating the open-plan office where young, hungry employees typed furiously on sleek laptops. The air buzzed with an aggressive energy, a relentless hum of deals being closed, code being written, and careers being forged. In this high-stakes world, everyone was in a hurry, striding through the corridors with an air of self-importance. And amidst it all was Anna. As an executive secretary, she was the silent, invisible gear that kept the entire machine running smoothly. Her desk was a bastion of perfect organization in a sea of creative chaos. Her days were a blur of scheduling impossible meetings, booking last-minute international flights, and preparing coffee exactly the way each executive liked it, a task requiring the precision of a chemist. She performed her duties flawlessly, yet she rarely received so much as a thank you. To the titans of Auratech, she was simply part of the office infrastructure, as functional and unnoticeable as the Wi-Fi signal. The company's CEO, Mr. Marcus Davenport, was the worst offender. A charismatic and celebrated figure in the tech world, he cultivated a public persona of a visionary leader. In private, however, he ruled with an iron fist and a dismissive arrogance. He would walk past Anna's desk every morning without a single glance, as if she were a ghost. If a minor detail went awry, a conference room booked for the wrong time, a document misfiled by someone else, the blame would inevitably fall on her shoulders. "Can't you even handle a simple calendar invite, Anna?" he would say in a tone of bored contempt, loud enough for others to hear. Despite the quiet, daily erosion of her dignity, Anna maintained a polite, professional smile. She knew that any emotional reaction would only confirm their perception of her as weak and insignificant. But beneath her calm exterior, a quiet strength was being forged in the fires of their indifference. While they were busy posturing and competing, she was observing, listening, and learning. She knew the company's secrets, not because she sought them out, but because people spoke as if she wasn't there. She was the keeper of an unseen map, charting the company's true landscape of power, alliances, and hidden vulnerabilities. The boardroom at Auratech was where power was put on full display. It was a glass-walled enclosure on the top floor, offering a panoramic view of the San Francisco Bay, a fitting backdrop for men who believed they ruled the world. On this particular afternoon, a group of high-stakes investors had flown in for a critical quarterly review. The tension was palpable. Anna moved around the room with practiced invisibility, pouring water, distributing glossy presentation folders, and ensuring every technical detail was perfect. Mr. Davenport was in his element, commanding the room with his booming voice and confident gestures, weaving a grand narrative of Auratech's inevitable market dominance. He was halfway through a complex slide on projected growth when the presentation suddenly froze. The screen went blank. A collective, anxious murmur filled the room. Mr. Davenport's charismatic smile vanished, replaced by a flash of cold fury. He furiously clicked the remote, but nothing happened. His eyes scanned the room for a target, and they landed on the easiest one. Anna. "Anna!" he barked, his voice cutting through the tension. "What is this? I pay you to make sure these things don't happen." He didn't wait for an answer. Turning back to the investors with a theatrical sigh, he said, "My apologies, gentlemen. It seems some of the office furniture isn't as reliable as it should be." The insult was deliberate, a public execution designed to deflect his own momentary loss of control. A few of the younger executives, eager to curry favor, let out nervous, sycophantic laughs. The investors shifted uncomfortably. Anna, standing by the wall, felt a hot flush of shame creep up her neck. The technical glitch was due to a network update she had warned his personal IT assistant about that very morning, but that detail didn't matter. In that moment, she was not a person, she was a scapegoat. She said nothing. She simply walked over to the console, rebooted the system with a few quiet keystrokes, and brought the presentation back to life. She then retreated to her spot against the wall, her expression unreadable. But as she stood there, enduring the humiliation in silence, something inside her shifted. The pain was real, but beneath it, a new, harder resolve began to form. Across the room, she caught the eye of Chloe, a junior analyst. Chloe wasn't laughing. Instead, she gave Anna a small, almost imperceptible nod, a silent acknowledgement of the injustice she had just witnessed. It was a tiny gesture, but for Anna, it was a lifeline. It was a reminder that even in a room full of powerful men, she was not entirely alone. The price of her silence was high, but she was beginning to realize it was also an investment. The boardroom incident set a new, crueler tone at Oratech. Mr. Davenport's public branding of Anna as furniture had given everyone else implicit permission to treat her as such. The microaggressions became more frequent and more blatant. Executives would drop files on her desk without a word, expecting them to be sorted. Colleagues would hold conversations right in front of her, discussing sensitive company matters as if she were deaf and dumb. She became a ghost in her own workspace, a silent witness to the company's inner workings, privy to secrets and strategies simply because no one bothered to lower their voice in her presence. The constant disregard was a heavy burden, a daily reminder of her perceived insignificance. Yet, with each slight, Anna's resolve hardened. She channeled her frustration not into anger, but into an almost superhuman level of observation. Her mind became a quiet, meticulous archive of every overheard conversation, every carelessly discarded document, every subtle shift in the office's political landscape. Her only source of solace was Chloe. The young analyst made it a point to stop by Anna's desk each day, not out of pity, but out of genuine respect. She would bring her a coffee, ask about her weekend, or simply share a brief, knowing look after Mr. Davenport had swept past in a storm of arrogance. "I don't know how you do it, Anna," Chloe said one afternoon, after witnessing an executive snap his fingers at Anna to get her attention. "You have the patience of a saint." Anna offered a small, weary smile. "It's just a job," she replied, the default answer she had given for years. But Chloe shook her head, her expression serious. "No, it's more than that. They don't see you, Anna. They have no idea how much you know or what you're capable of. And honestly, I think that's your superpower." The word superpower struck a chord with Anna. For the first time, she began to reframe her situation. Her invisibility wasn't just a source of pain. It was a cloak. It allowed her to move through the battlefield unseen, to gather intelligence while everyone else was focused on the loud, flashy explosions of corporate warfare. Chloe's friendship was more than just a comfort. It was a mirror, reflecting a version of herself that she was starting to believe in. A version that was not weak, but strategic, not silent, but observant. This quiet alliance, forged in the shadows of corporate indifference, became her anchor, keeping her steady as she navigated the toxic currents of Oratech. One evening, Anna was tasked with a project no one else wanted, reorganizing the physical archives for the company's last fiscal decade to make space for new servers. It was a tedious, dusty job, seen as beneath even the interns. For hours, she worked alone in the dimly lit storage room, surrounded by towering shelves of forgotten history. As she sorted through stacks of old financial reports and vendor contracts, her sharp eye for detail began to notice a pattern. It started with small things. Expense reports from Mr. Davenport's executive team that were lavishly padded, with personal luxuries disguised as business necessities. Then she found vendor contracts with inflated invoices, with certain companies being paid far more than the market rate for their services. Her curiosity piqued. She cross-referenced the names of these overpaid vendors with a list of shell corporations she had once seen on a stray document. The pieces began to click into place. This wasn't just sloppy accounting. It was a deliberate, systematic siphoning of company funds. She found a series of contracts with a consulting firm she had never heard of, a firm that had been paid millions of dollars for strategic advisory services. The signatures on the approval forms were all from Mr. Davenport and his inner circle. Driven by a mix of professional duty and a growing sense of indignation, Anna began to work with a quiet intensity. She started making discrete copies of the most damning documents, using a small, out-of-the-way scanner late at night when the office was empty. She created a digital folder on a personal encrypted hard drive, meticulously organizing the evidence into a clear and undeniable paper trail. Each document was a breadcrumb, and together they led directly to a massive scheme of fraud and embezzlement orchestrated by the very people who treated her with such contempt. She wasn't a detective or a whistleblower. She was just a secretary doing her job with the integrity her bosses lacked. But as she saved the final file and ejected the hard drive, she felt a tremor of power. This small piece of plastic in her hand held the truth. It was a secret weapon, forged in silence and neglect, and she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that the time to use it was getting closer. The catalyst for change arrived not with a bang, but with a formal, unassuming email. Auratech was initiating a mandatory governance and compliance audit, a standard procedure triggered by new federal regulations for publicly traded tech companies. While the executive team saw it as a bureaucratic nuisance, the company's legal department was in a quiet panic. The audit required a thorough review of foundational documents, partnership agreements, and board meeting minutes dating back to the company's inception, records that had long been relegated to the physical archives in the building's sub-basement. After 2 days of fruitless searching by junior paralegals who were lost in the labyrinth of poorly labeled boxes, the head of the legal department, a pragmatic man named Mr. Chen, remembered a piece of office lore. If something was truly lost within Auratech, there was only one person who might know where to find it. He called Anna to his office, an act so unusual that it caused a stir among the other secretaries. "Anna," he said, getting straight to the point, "we're in a bind. We need the original incorporation documents and all board minutes from the first 5 years. No one can find them. People say you know this building better than anyone." For the first time in years, someone was acknowledging her unique and encyclopedic knowledge. It wasn't a request for coffee, it was a plea for her expertise. Armed with a master keycard and a sense of quiet purpose, Anna descended into the archives. The air in the sub-basement was cold and still, thick with the smell of aging paper and dust. It was a place of forgotten history, a corporate tomb where ideas and ambitions from decades past lay dormant. For Anna, however, it was a familiar library. She navigated the towering metal shelves with an expert's ease, her fingers tracing the faded labels. She bypassed the mislabeled boxes that had confused the paralegals and went straight to a neglected corner, to a set of fireproof cabinets she herself had organized years ago after a minor flood. There, perfectly preserved, were the documents Mr. Chen needed. As she was carefully lifting a heavy binder of board minutes, her hand brushed against a smaller, ledger-sized book tucked behind it. It wasn't a standard company record. It was bound in dark green leather with no label. Curiosity overriding her usual deference, she pulled it out. Tucked inside the front cover was a thick, cream-colored envelope, sealed with a wax stamp bearing the initial of the company's founder, the late and legendary Arthur Vance. A handwritten note on the front read, in elegant fading ink, "For the guardian of this house, to be opened only when its soul is at risk." It's incredible how a single moment, a forgotten envelope in a dusty room, can change everything. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most overlooked people are the ones holding the most important keys. If you believe that integrity and quiet dedication deserve to be recognized, hit that like button to show your support for Anna's journey. Your click helps stories about overcoming adversity reach a wider audience. Anna stood for a long moment in the silent, dusty archive, the heavy envelope feeling like a stone in her hand. The founder, Arthur Vance, was a near-mythical figure at Oratech, a visionary who had passed away over a decade ago. He was remembered as a brilliant but deeply principled man, a stark contrast to the cutthroat ethos Mr. Davenport had cultivated. The message on the envelope, "When its soul is at risk," resonated with a chilling accuracy. She knew, with the certainty of someone who had witnessed the company's decay from the inside, that its soul was indeed in peril. Her first instinct was to deliver the documents Mr. Chen had requested and leave the mysterious envelope untouched. It was safer to remain invisible. But then she thought of Chloe's words, "That's your superpower," and the years of quiet humiliation. This was a crossroads. She could retreat into the shadows, or she could follow this unexpected path. With a deep breath, she placed the envelope carefully on top of the binders and carried everything upstairs to the legal department. Mr. Chen's eyes widened when he saw the sealed envelope. He recognized the founder's seal immediately. "My God," he whispered, "where did you find this?" Anna explained calmly, and he listened with rapt attention. Following strict legal protocol for handling such a discovery during an audit, he called in 2 members of the compliance team and a corporate notary to witness the opening. He insisted that Anna remain present. "You found it, Anna. You are part of this chain of custody," he stated, giving her a look that was a mixture of respect and apprehension. The small group gathered around a conference table, the air thick with tension. The notary meticulously documented the condition of the envelope before Mr. Chen carefully broke the wax seal. Inside, there were 2 documents. The first was a multi-page letter, handwritten by Arthur Vance. In it, he wrote about his fears for the company's future. "A company is more than its profits. It is a living entity with a soul," he wrote. "I fear that one day, men of ambition without principle will seize control and corrupt it from within." The second document was a legally binding codicil to his will, drafted by a top law firm. It was titled The Guardian's Clause. It stipulated that in the event of proven gross misconduct or ethical corruption by the company's leadership, the full voting power of the founder's substantial controlling block of shares would be immediately transferred to a designated guardian. This guardian, chosen for their integrity and loyalty to the company's founding principles, would have the authority to steer the company back to its ethical course. The final page of the codicil contained a single chilling instruction. The name of the designated guardian is recorded in the official corporate ledger, Volume 1, Page 1, under the entry for contingent beneficiary. Mr. Chen sent a paralegal sprinting to the records vault. When the heavy ledger was brought in and opened to the first page, the room fell silent. There, next to the entry, written in the same elegant ink as the letter, was a single name, Anna. An emergency assembly of all senior staff and board members was called for the following afternoon. The official reason given was to discuss preliminary findings of the internal audit, a dry, corporate phrase that did little to convey the seismic shift that was about to occur. The boardroom was buzzing with a nervous energy. Mr. Davenport sat at the head of the table, looking bored and slightly irritated by the interruption to his day. He believed the audit was a mere formality, a box-ticking exercise he could easily navigate. He caught Anna's eye as she entered the room to distribute water, and he gave her a dismissive smirk, as if to remind her of her place. Anna, however, did not retreat to the wall as she usually would. At Mr. Chen's insistence, she took a seat at the table with the legal team, an act that caused a ripple of confused murmurs. Mr. Davenport's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. Mr. Chen began the meeting with a cold, clinical precision. He presented the initial findings of the audit, laying out a damning case against the current leadership. He spoke of financial discrepancies, unethical vendor contracts, and a pattern of behavior that directly violated the company's code of conduct. With each slide, the atmosphere in the room grew heavier. Mr. Davenport's face hardened, his confident posture slowly stiffening into a defensive rigidity. "These are baseless accusations," he interrupted, his voice booming. "A creative interpretation of standard business practices." But Mr. Chen was prepared. "On the contrary," he said, his voice unwavering, "they are facts. Facts which, according to our findings, trigger a specific provision left by our founder, Mr. Arthur Vance." He then revealed the existence of the Guardian's Clause, explaining its function in detail. The room fell into a stunned silence. The idea of a hidden clause, a legal failsafe left by the founder, was the stuff of corporate legend. "And who is this Guardian?" Mr. Davenport sneered, the question dripping with sarcasm. "Another one of Vance's idealistic fantasies?" Mr. Chen didn't answer. He simply nodded to the notary, who formally presented the authenticated corporate ledger, opened to the first page. He projected a high-resolution image of the page onto the main screen for all to see. The camera zoomed in on the entry for contingent beneficiary. And there it was, in elegant, undeniable script. Anna. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated shock. Mr. Davenport stared at the screen, his face draining of all color. He then turned to look at Anna, his eyes wide with disbelief and a dawning, horrified rage. He laughed, a short, sharp, incredulous bark. "Her? The secretary? This is a joke. This is utterly absurd." But his laughter was hollow, drowned out by the heavy, earth-shattering silence of the truth. The invisible woman was now at the center of their universe. The chaos that erupted in the boardroom was immediate. Some board members were shouting, demanding an explanation. Others were on their phones, presumably calling their own lawyers. Mr. Davenport was on his feet, his face a mask of fury, yelling about lawsuits and corporate espionage. "This is a coup! A pathetic, illegal coup orchestrated by a nobody!" he roared, pointing a trembling finger at Anna. Throughout it all, Anna remained perfectly still, a small island of calm in a raging sea of panic. She had spent years absorbing the chaos of others in silence, and that practice had given her an almost unbreakable composure. Mr. Chen, seeing the meeting devolving, banged his gavel for order. "This is not a debate," he stated firmly. "This is a legally binding instrument. The clause has been triggered. The power of the founder's shares now rests with Anna, pending a full board vote on the leadership's future." All eyes turned back to Anna. They expected her to be timid, overwhelmed, or perhaps vengeful. They expected her to falter. Instead, she rose slowly to her feet, her movements deliberate and sure. She walked to the podium, the same podium from which Mr. Davenport had so often delivered his arrogant speeches. The room fell silent again, this time with a tense, grudging curiosity. What could the secretary possibly have to say? "Good afternoon," she began, her voice quiet but clear, carrying to every corner of the room without the need for a microphone. It was a voice they had heard 1,000 times, taking messages and confirming appointments, but now it was imbued with an authority they had never imagined. "For the past 12 years, I have had the privilege of observing this company from a unique perspective. I have seen its strengths, and I have seen its weaknesses." She didn't speak of her humiliation. She didn't mention the insults or the years of being treated like furniture. There was no hint of personal revenge in her tone. Instead, she spoke with the precision of a seasoned analyst. She laid out a clear, concise vision for Aurotech's future, one that honored Arthur Vance's founding principles of innovation with integrity. She referenced specific projects that had been mismanaged, citing data and figures from memory. She proposed a new cultural framework focused on transparency, employee well-being, and ethical product development. She spoke not as a victim seeking retribution, but as a leader ready to govern. Her competence was undeniable, her vision sharp and compelling. It was a masterful performance, born from a decade of silent observation. The executives and board members stared at her, their expressions shifting from disbelief to a dawning, grudging respect. They had never truly seen her before, and now that they did, they were speechless. The boardroom assembly ended not with a bang, but with the quiet, decisive click of Mr. Chen closing his briefcase. The legal framework was ironclad, and the board, faced with a choice between a corrupt CEO and a legally empowered, surprisingly competent guardian, began to fracture. Mr. Davenport's allies, who had thrived under his reign of fear, were now scrambling, their loyalty evaporating in the face of legal and financial repercussions. His attempts to rally support were met with averted eyes and non-committal murmurs. The power he had wielded so absolutely was gone, and he knew it. He made one last, desperate attempt, cornering Anna as she was leaving the room. His voice was no longer booming with authority, but was a low, venomous hiss. "You think you've won? You're a secretary. You know nothing about running a global enterprise. You will crash and burn, and you will take this entire company down with you." Anna met his gaze without flinching. The fear he had once inspired in her was gone, replaced by a calm, steady resolve. "You're wrong, Mr. Davenport," she said, her voice even. "I know how to listen. I know how to see people. And I know that a company built on disrespect is already broken. I'm not here to run it your way. I'm here to fix what you broke." Her words, simple and direct, struck him with the force of a physical blow. There was no arguing with her logic because it wasn't about spreadsheets or market caps. It was about a fundamental truth he had long forgotten. Defeated, he turned and stormed out, his exit not that of a powerful CEO, but of a dethroned king. The next morning, an official memo was circulated. Mr. Davenport and two of his closest executives were placed on immediate administrative leave, pending a formal vote for their termination. The news spread through Auratech like a shockwave. In the hallways, the usual arrogant chatter was replaced by hushed, uncertain whispers. People looked at Anna with a mixture of awe, fear, and disbelief. She was no longer invisible. She was a symbol. For some, she was a threat to the status quo. But for the vast majority of employees, the engineers, the analysts, the administrative staff who had endured the toxic culture in silence, she was a beacon of hope. The fall of the tyrant was swift and decisive, not because of a bloody battle, but because his foundation of fear had crumbled the moment someone with true integrity was given a voice. Anna did not take Mr. Davenport's corner office. She did not claim the title of CEO. That was never her goal. Instead, she worked with the board to establish a new Office of the Guardian, a permanent oversight role designed to ensure the company's adherence to its founding ethical principles. Her first official act was to promote Chloe to a senior position in a newly created Department of Employee Culture and Well-Being. Her second was to implement an anonymous, independently managed system for reporting workplace harassment, the very thing that would have protected her years ago. She moved through the company not as a ruler, but as a healer, listening to the concerns of employees at every level. She instituted policies that valued work-life balance, mental health support, and, most importantly, a zero-tolerance policy for disrespect, regardless of an employee's title. The changes were profound. The aggressive, backstabbing culture began to recede, replaced by a spirit of collaboration and mutual respect. Productivity and innovation, contrary to Mr. Davenport's predictions, soared. People were no longer afraid to voice new ideas or point out potential problems. They were empowered. Anna remained a quiet presence, but now her silence was one of strength and wisdom. She would sit in on high-level meetings, not saying much, but her presence alone was a constant reminder of the new standard. She had become the company's conscience. The story of the invisible secretary who saved the soul of Auratech became a legend in Silicon Valley, a cautionary tale for arrogant leaders and a story of hope for the overlooked everywhere. And as we end this story, it's worth asking yourself, how many Annas have you overlooked in your own life or workplace? The quiet ones, the ones who do the work without demanding the credit. This story is a testament to the fact that true strength isn't always loud. If you were inspired by Anna's journey of overcoming adversity, please share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of their own quiet power. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove that sometimes the most unlikely heroes are the ones who change the world. Anna, the woman who was once invisible, had become the architect of a new era, proving that the most powerful legacy is not one of dominance, but one of dignity.